My name is William Carey, and this is my story. I was born in England in 1761, and as a child I loved insects and plants. I filled my room with different kinds of insects and studied their habits. When I was a young man, I became an apprentice to a shoemaker. My master, Mr. Thomas Old, had a library filled with books, some written in Greek. I loved reading those books. I would copy Greek works, search their definitions, and before long, I had mastered the Greek language, and I was fascinated with every new language I encountered. I grew up in an Anglican church, but I was saved at the age of 18, and soon thereafter joined a Baptist church. I was baptized in the River Nene on October 5th, 1783 by Pastor John Ryland. Right away, I had a zeal to preach the gospel. In 1786, I became a pastor of Malton Baptist Church, and 3 years later, the Harvey Lane Baptist Church of Leicester. These were small churches, and I had to work as a school teacher and a shoemaker to support my family. I made a world map out of leather and kept it in my shoe shop, so that I would be reminded to pray for the nations. I was stirred by the published accounts of world travel and of missionary ventures. Finally, the day came that I announced my desire to become a missionary. People in England were not sympathetic. "Why would you want to do that?" they asked. "Paul and the other apostles already took the gospel to the world. Nothing more can be done." They said, other people had concerns about language barriers. How would you witness to people in a language you don't know? My former pastor, a staunch Calvinist, told me, "When God pleases to convert the heathen, he will do it without your aid or mine." I knew that there would be hardship on the mission field, but I still wanted to go. Since churches were not interested in sending out missionaries, in October 1792, a few others formed the Baptist Missionary Society. India would become our first mission field, and I would be their first missionary. I sailed for India in 1793, but the British East India Company would not allow missionary work, fearing it would offend the native people and harm their commercial venture. The Lord knew I would need the knowledge of plants in India. In fact, my first job was planting India. After a few troublesome years, I moved to the Danish settlement at Seprampur near Calcutta, where I was free to preach the gospel to the natives. I was joined by Joshua Marshman and William Ward, and for the next 25 years, we worked together in harmony. We had the first Hindu convert to Christ, which occurred after we had labored for 7 years. His name was Krishna Paul. Krishna was a 36-year-old carpenter. After dislocating his arm in a fall, he had sought medical help from Dr. John Thomas, a co-laborer with me. And Thomas and Marshman told him of a disease they said was even more deadly: sin. He wanted to know more, and a month later, he publicly confessed Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior, and was baptized, and the first Indian convert to Christianity in modern times. I baptized Krishna and his eldest son Felix that day. When Krishna broke fast by eating with the missionaries, 2,000 of his Hindu neighbors gathered against him to punish him. But the Danish governor protected him and even attended his baptism. The Hindus tried to force Krishna's daughter to marry a Hindu. But again, the Danish governor intervened and ruled that she could not be forced to marry against her will. Krishna's wife's sisters, sister-in-law, and other relatives professed Christ. And for the next 2 decades, he preached the gospel until his death in 1822. My team published the first complete Bible in 6 languages and the New Testament in 23. We started the first printing press in India on an organized scale. And since the people had their own Bibles now, they need to be taught. We established the Serampore College to train Christian workers. I taught language classes for the next 30 years. We founded the Agricultural Society of India to help increase food production for the masses. With God's help, we helped to abolish the practice of sati, whereby the Hindu widows were burned alive at their husband's funeral. I spent 41 years in India without ever returning to England for a furlough. I lived to see all of my children choose mission work for their own lives. Wow. And I was able to show the people of India that I and God cared for them, and it opened many hearts to the gospel. Through obedience to God's call, many missionaries followed in my footsteps and pursued missions for their own lives.
Amen.